Acharya Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki Nanda Gaudiya Vaishnava ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Vedadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopavina Shyamakanda Radhakanda Giri Vardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Mathura Dham ki Gangam ki Yamunam ki Tulsi Devi ki Bhakti Devi ki Samveda Bhaktivinoda ki all glories to Samguru Hare Krishna, all glories to Samguru Hare Krishna, all glories to Shri and Gauranga, all glories to Shri Prabhupada.
It sounds like it's like really far away.
This is working? I don't think this is working. I don't think it's like you're gonna put it in again.
Oh, that's like bouncing when you
No,
talk.
but like the phone hasn't registered it.
Oh, okay.
It's just using its own microphone. See, let me see that.
Huh?
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from chapter 8, chapter entitled Question by King Parikshit. Text number 8, canto 2, text number 10, chapter 8, text number 10. Sa chapi yatra purusho vishva sthiti udbhavapyayah muktvatma mayam mayeshah shiti sarva guhashayah sachapi yat purusho vishvastiti udbhavapyayah muktvatmamaya mayeshah sheti sarvaguhashayah sachapi yat purusho vishvastiti udbhavapayah muktvatmamaya mayesha. Hang on 1 second. Sheti sarvaguhashayah. Please repeat. Sachapi yatra purusho Okay, Mataji's. Okay. Saha, he, cha, also, api, as he is, yatra, where, purushaha, the personality of Godhead, vishva, the material worlds, sthiti, maintenance, udbhava, creation, apayaha, apyayaha, annihilation, muktva, without being touched, atmamayam, own energy, maya ishaha, the Lord of all energies, sheti, does not lie on, does lie on, sarvaguhashayaha, one who lies in everyone's heart. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Please explain the personality of Godhead who lies in everyone's heart as the Supersoul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by His external energy. Purport. Undoubtedly, the form of the Lord who is seen by Brahma must be transcendental. Otherwise, how could he simply look upon the creative energy without being touched? It is understood also that the same Purusha lies in the heart of every living entity. This also requires proper explanation. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Namitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Padakalam Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragnathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savitutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Leda Shri Vishakhan Vitam Shahe Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinavindu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatravesha Kripa Sindhubhya Vicha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Anandamayam Devi Okay, so here in the...
Yeah, I'll get that fuzzy thing.
Okay. So here we're Maharaj Parikshit. This title of this chapter is the questions put forward by Maharaj Parikshit. And so he is asked a few questions so far, and we're up to the text 10, and he continues to do so. And especially in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Now, it's pretty clear that Maharaj Parikshit himself has some knowledge. I mean, a great amount of knowledge, especially to be able to sit down and understand what the goal of life is, and in the bank of the Ganga, and hear from Shukadeva Goswami in itself is perfection, not just the questions he's asking or the answers he's receiving, just the fact that he's associated with the sadhus in itself is perfection. And you can hear the lectures, the sadhus as tirthas. So he is not an ordinary person, obviously, being the grandson of Arjuna. He himself was personally saved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the womb of Uttara. So Maharaj Parikshit is not an ordinary person asking ordinary questions. It's a very important point to make note of. Because no ordinary person asks, please explain the personality of Godhead who lies in everyone's heart as the super soul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. It's like asking a teacher, please explain this algebra to me which works like this. He's asking Shukadeva Goswami to describe in detail. There's the instance of this in the fourth canto also, where Maharaj Prithu, King Prithu, is asking the Sanat Kumaras questions. And so Sanat Kumaras, they reply, my dear King Prithu, I'm very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially because they are raised by you, who are always thinking of the good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your positions. So Mitravan Prabhu, I believe, was making the point also a few lectures ago that even self-realized persons ask questions. It is not that they're deficient in knowledge or they need some more knowledge, or they're completely full because persons such as Maharaj Parikshit is a pure devotee of the Lord. Nonetheless, they ask those questions by which others can be benefited, and that is the symptom of a sadhu. He's a saintly person. Naturally, he desires benefit for others. So here, we're seeing the questions and answers go on. And so this is a big part of society, as Srila Prabhupada comments in the famous verse, or this famous line, is 1.2.5. In the purport he mentions, the whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds, the beasts, men are all busy with the matter of perpetual questions and answers. In the morning, the birds in the nest become busy with questions and answers, and in the evening also the same birds come back again and become busy with questions and answers. The human being, unless he is fast asleep at night, is busy with questions and answers. The businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers. And also the lawyers in the court and the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers. Although they go on making such questions and answers for their whole lives, they are not at all satisfied. So, Prabhupada finishes off this paragraph by satisfaction of the soul can only be attained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. So one who asks questions and answers, everybody's asking questions and answers in this world, as Prabhupada is saying here, but one who starts to ask intellectual questions, one who starts to ask questions that challenge the mind is considered a philosopher, Muni. So when one starts to dive into more of the deeper questions of life, like philosophers that we have in the Western world, they, Plato, Aristotle, so many others. I don't know so many of them. I didn't really get to study them. But they were considered great persons, not just because, they had their philosophy, which often later down the line was, disproved or broken or challenged. But they were considered great personalities because they asked really good questions. They asked very good questions and were in the pursuit of those answers. So they are in the world, even now, when you go to school and when you go to universities, you see your professors, or philosophy professors particularly, they're mental speculators, speculate on the nature of truth, and the nature of life, on the nature of anything. As often you've heard yourself in Bhakti Vikas Maharaj's lectures, philosophy has no end to it. It's like 1 + 1, well, what is 1? Let's define 1 first. And then 1 + 1 is 2. So then how do you come to that conclusion? Then you have to go through a whole, you can never what is a 1? How do you define a 1? And then you can keep just going from that and never come to an end. So mental speculation, these philosophers, they never come to an end. Even the nature of a question itself can become a philosophical problem. Because, the philosophers, I heard this from Mason, who was here. He goes to philosophy classes or club. He has a philosophy club that he's involved in. And he was saying that actually the way of questions, here I've got it written down, I actually found a philosopher who said this also. He said that, this is Cohen, he's one of the persons back about 100 years ago who wrote in a philosophy journal, and he writes, philosophical provocation on par with the pinpricks and miracles to the formation of assertions. Now that is, questions are not, this is somebody else that is making it clear what that means, because it's a lot of big words that are being used there and it's difficult to understand for us. But that is, questions not merely a means to the end of answers. Questions are valuable in their own right. In philosophy, questions are probably more important than answers. So why am I quoting this? Because Mason was saying that in philosophy, these philosophy clubs, they say, the questions in themselves is a journey, and it doesn't actually, you don't need an answer. So you don't need an answer, but then now if you want to get philosophical, what is the use of a question then? If you pose a question, there has to be an answer. Now, if there is no answer, then what is the question? So then you start to run into this problem. Then what's actually going on? You run into a loop. As often we describe in different parts of the literatures how the mental speculator, he traps himself. By his mental speculation, he traps himself. So the philosophers, they think they're very smart, but it's such a dumb thing. Oh, you can have a question, but it doesn't have to have an answer. So then what is a question? When I said this to Mason, he was like, yeah, you're right. It's like, what the heck? It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. So they bewildered themselves with their own questions. And so there's another famous saying that actually it's not that, the question isn't, there's this one person says this who is considered a great thinker of modern society, Elon Musk. He says that the problem is not, hang on a sec, I'm losing it here. The problem is not trying to formulate. So the problem is not trying to get a proper answer, but trying to formulate a proper question. Is it? It says it's not that, it's just the question isn't just what is the meaning of life, but actually to formulate a proper question to ask. Because was he saying this? Was because he was specifically referring to the fact that when he was younger, he was asking questions about life, and he was approaching religions. And he said, I got any text that I could in the Western world, and I studied them, and I just couldn't find anything that was concrete. He should have got the Bhagavatam. So this is the nature of this world. There's questions and answers and questions and answers. But because these philosophers on the platform of mental speculation go on and depend on their own senses, mind, the conditioned soul with the 4 defects, they never can come to a conclusion. Therefore, any conclusion anyone else comes to, it's not actually a proper conclusion. Because in another article that I read, was saying, it's always changing. So the answer becomes different at every stage, every and when you progress, your answers become different. So ultimately, even your answers aren't real answers, because they don't give you a conclusion. Because the point of a question is that it satisfies the question. I mean, the point of an answer is that it satisfies the question, otherwise the answer is not fulfilling the purpose. So it's very important to ask a proper question. Therefore, that is the first aphorism of Vedanta. Tato Brahma Jigyasa. This is the first, or is this one of the... Yes, this is the first. So this is the first in Vedanta is, now that you have attained the human form of life, inquire. Not just some stupid inquiries about, where is food, where is water, where is shelter. But now ask the questions about Brahman, ask the question about spiritual life. Now start to begin to inquire. But people are so stuck in their own, in the materialistic concepts of life, they do not even begin those. There's, these philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, all this, their questions were a lot more, okay, what is the universe? How does these things work? What is the meaning of life? But they can never come to a conclusion. Whereas when we start to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, these questions that the sages are asking are immediately on that platform of Krishna consciousness. And those questions are, as related by Sutta Goswami and Shukadeva Goswami, they mention that these words, you are asking perfect questions, as we have the book, Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers. So the speakers of the Bhagavatam, they glorify the questioner for their question. Why? Because those questions are worthy. Why? Because they ultimately satisfy the self. As the, O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. This comes over and over again. Why are your questions great? Why are your questions great? Because they are of relevance to the world's welfare. It's not just these philosophers, they come up with all this very intense, intrinsic, the very complicated philosophies, and so they can be glorified. But they don't actually solve the real problems of life, birth, death, old age, and disease at all. Whereas these questions that are being asked to Sutta Goswami by the sages of Naimisharanya and by Parikshit Maharaj, they are solving not just these philosophical aspects of life, which Srimad Bhagavatam, everything, all the questions are answered within the Srimad Bhagavatam, but also they allow one to come to the platform of complete knowledge. Because even the philosophers, they've discussed different types of questions. Questions that deal with, let me see here, I had written some of them down. So different philosophers dealt with different questions. So Plato, specifically exploring knowledge and the process of remembering as a form of questioning. So he would, how all this works, he would question that. Aristotle discussed, it says here, that discussed questions as a crucial part of logic. He distinguished between different types of questions. And then there's few who discuss the questions of meaning of life and the purpose of life. So many aspects of this, but the questions that have been asked by the sages of Naimisharanya and Parikshit Maharaj and all the Vidura and all these great sages in the Bhagavatam, they fulfill all of this at once. They are not separate. Why? Because Krishna is the fountainhead. Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam. By the recitation, by the proper understanding and hearing of Krishna consciousness, all these different aspects that the philosophers of the modern age try to dive into separately become satisfied in one shot. So here, Prabhupada in this 1.5.10, which is another famous verse, those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly person to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendent abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So when the devotees of the Lord, they hear of such philosophers, and they read about them, or sometimes they see their philosophy or examine their philosophy, it's not very relishable at all. It is very dry, and you can see the faults within it within the first couple of sentences. And so the saintly persons, they consider that to be unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. It is very nasty. Those places where crows go is very dirty. Often, when you go to India, do they have crows here? I've never seen, maybe different type. In Georgia? You have crows here? Not like what's there in India and right? It's like big flocks, they travel together. They have here also, they travel together. But you'll see in India, you'll see on the road, on the lines, they all sit together. The pigeons sit like this here, but the seagulls are not so close to the sea. But the crows, they often come together where there is death, where there is dead living entities, nasty, a lot of trash. So Prabhupada makes some points here. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitude. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conference and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water, nicely decorated with stems of lotus flower in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Here, Prabhupada, this particular verse sticked out to me from the instant I read it, the first time I ever read it. Prabhupada says, social literary men, scientists, mundane philosophers, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls of the material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhar, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas who have grasped the essence of human activities. So the Bhagavatam, it grasps the essence of human activities. But those who indulge in such mundane works, this is the pleasure of prostitute hunters. Very nasty, very low class. So this modern society of questioning and questions and answers, for the sake of material advancement is simply a waste of one's time. It is simply a waste of the human form of life, because the essence of human form of life is atato brahma jigyasa. Now inquire about the absolute truth. Come to complete knowledge. So it's meant to grasp that literature which one reads or tries to understand should grasp the essence of human activities. What is the purpose of it? What is it for? All these things are to be known and to be endeavored to know. Not just from mundane philosophers, but from those who are apaurushaya, from those who are non-defected by the material energy, who are free of the 4 defects of imperfect senses, of being illusion, cheating, And what's the other one that I always forget? Making mistakes. Can never come to a proper conclusion. But those who are on the transcendental platform, who are in direct connection with the spiritual line of a proper sampradaya, they can impart unto you absolute knowledge, absolute truth, because they themselves have seen the truth and they are connected with it. They are practicing it, they are living by it. One thing that if you want to be a great philosopher, and those great philosophers, if they start to actually use their intelligence and see that actually most of these people's lives, they do not live according to their philosophy. I was thinking about this because, we get questions a lot in Krishna consciousness. A lot of questions. Why this? Why that? Why that? Why this? Why that? But actually, I realized for some reason, and I never thought about this so much before, if I asked the same question to karmis, they would have no clue whatsoever. And they're questioning us, and we're able to answer them. And even after so many answers, they will not accept the process of Krishna consciousness. But you rascal, I'll question your existence a little bit, and you won't reject it. The level of illusion that is present in material society, it's unbelievable actually. Because their philosophy makes no sense, even on surface level. It makes no sense whatsoever. But they cannot reject it. And at the same time, they cannot accept Krishna consciousness even though it answers their questions. Why? Why is this? What does Prahlad Maharaj say? Because they have made it a point to continue in their material existence. They are determined to be sense gratifiers, independent of whether there is no logic or sense to it at all. Actually, it has no logic or sense. You can break it down very quickly. But even if you break them down, it doesn't matter. And you can answer their questions. This is the nature of the conditioned soul. So questions and answers, so many questions and answers. And even when we get the proper answers, if it's not according to our sense gratification, we do not accept the answer. But Parikshit Maharaj is not inquiring like that. Parikshit Maharaj is not here looking to see what is his benefit. You see, the reason people ask questions is what can I get out of it? Those questions, I'll ask the questions to see if I can benefit. And if I cannot benefit, even if the answers are right, then I will not take those answers. Just like one person, so many persons I've dealt with like that, being in the service that I do, is that you can answer all their questions and defeat their philosophy, and at the end of it, they'll just say, I hope your philosophy is wrong. What? I hope? What do you mean? So far, we've defeated every single point that you've come across, why not to practice Krishna consciousness and why material life is terrible, but still so hell-bent on sense gratification that you hope that the philosophy is wrong. You said, I'm going to study your books and I'm going to find faults and then I'm going to come and ask you a question. I'm like, go ahead. What I'm telling you is exactly from the books. There's nothing different that I'm speaking to you. Every analogy, everything that we're saying is we're deriving out straight from Srila Prabhupada and his words and Shastra. So then they want to study the books. Why study alone? Well, then nobody's there to defeat those other questions. There's the book describes it in this way, but then you haven't read it completely. So then you come up with your own philosophy of how this is actually wrong. And actually, this is why one needs a spiritual master and why one needs sadhus and association. It's not just by reading that you can overcome everything. And yes, that is there, but there is the importance of a sadhu, of a spiritual master, of a guru in one's life to remove those doubts. So such people, they read with the intention of getting their own happiness, but people such as Maharaj Parikshit and the sages in Naimisharanya, they're not asking for their own benefit, they're not looking for their own sense gratification, therefore they accept, there is no accepting and rejecting on the platform of the mind. There's accepting and rejecting on the they accept because they, first of all, they're approaching persons who are perfected. That in itself is the problem of the materialist. When they go and approach people, they approach those who are imperfect. Imperfect in their knowledge, imperfect in their behavior, sinful, they have no idea of the goal of human life. And then they themselves are defected. So the cheaters and the cheated in this society. But Maharaj Parikshit is thoroughly, those purified men who are thoroughly honest. So sages of Naimisharanya, Parikshit Maharaj are persons who are purified, who are pure. Purified, that might be a wrong word because he himself is a Nitya Siddha. So, who are completely perfect. And then they're approaching persons who are completely perfect. Therefore, the conditioned soul should take that advice which a completely perfect person has questioned another complete perfect person. And therefore, the answer in itself is completely perfect. So, Maharaj Parikshit, although he is knowing of the nature of Krishna, he knows this aspect of the super soul. He's asking, oh, please describe all this in detail. Who lies in everyone's heart and the super soul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. It's very difficult to understand. As I've spoken about this few times because I heard it from, forget Maharaj's name now, but I've heard from a this great devotee, and he was describing in the Bhagavad Gita how this aspect of it is quite bewildering to the Mayavadis and to the impersonalists, that the Lord is situated in the heart, in his personal aspect as the super soul, and he is not attached. He's completely attached. He is not influenced by the material energy. Although the living entity himself, who is the qualitatively nature, with same qualitative nature as the super soul, is affected by this material energy, but the super soul is not affected at all. How is this possible? So Maharaj Parikshit is asking a proper question, by which people will come to proper knowledge about the Bhagavan aspect of Krishna, the complete aspect of Krishna, not some impersonal light or some Brahman aspect of it. The Prabhupada says, therefore, undoubtedly the form of the Lord, who was seen by Brahma, must be transcendental. Otherwise, how could he simply look upon the creative energy without being touched? It is understood also that same Purusha lies in the heart of every living entity. This also requires proper explanation. Proper inquiries and proper explanations are the way that the Bhagavatam presents Krishna consciousness knowledge to us. So here, there's not so much in the purport, but I wanted to just dive into some of these aspects of proper questions and proper answers and how this is taking place in the world, but it is it has no use and benefit. Anyways, Guru Maharaj recites this, what's his name, the philosopher who said, even you look at your mother as a sex, Sigmund Freud. What a crazy guy. He was regarded as a great philosopher. So all these philosophers, they bring about great problems actually in time. Although seemingly okay, seemingly whatever looked upon as great people. But great philosophers such as Maharaj Parikshit, who ask great questions, bring about satisfaction to the heart, bring about great knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, invoke that knowledge from those great souls like Shukadeva Goswami, explained in proper detail, with proper understanding, so that the rest of the civilization can also take advantage of it and become completely perfect in their questions and their answers also. So I will end my class there. There's a lot more that can be said, but I wanted to touch on some of those things. A few of those things Prabhupada has said here is Brahma, that the form of the Lord who is seen by Brahma must be transcendental. That Maharaj Parikshit is qualifying that, making that clear in the question itself. So I wanted to just finish there, and if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yes.
How would you explain the difference?
Is it on? You're going to press the on button. You see the power button? Yeah. Just hold it down. Yep. And then it'll show up too.
Yeah.
There's a hook on.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Huh?
Did you turn it on the thing?
Yeah, it's on. It's too much, bro.
There you go.
Hare Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
You were brushing up upon Aristotle and Plato's and Socrates, and it seems like in the history of philosophers, at least around that time, the questions that they asked were of a higher quality than recent philosophers.
Oh, yeah.
And
what is a woman?
Yeah. You were saying how basically they become bewildered by their own questions, and it seems like the degradation of philosophers just sort of comes from that bewilderment of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just thinking what brings them? Is it because they're impious that they can't sort of improve on, for instance, if you compare it to philosophers from India, their inquiries bring them towards a completely different path than the inquiries of impious philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that?
Well, ascending and descending process. The philosophers in the West are very much about ascending, that we will examine and we will find out and we will know. Whereas if you look at the tradition of Vedic culture, it's a descending process, that you're given knowledge, perfect knowledge, and then you study that, and then whatever. Then there's the jnanis that speculate upon that. So they accept perfect knowledge, whereas the Western philosophers, what do they just have? They don't have anything to accept. They just have to they have their previous Acarya philosophers, and then they have to just build on that. But it's all they have to build on it and advance it because it's not perfect already. But in Vedic culture, we understand that Vedanta, so the end of all knowledge, it's already there. So then now we just have to understand it and inquire about it. So that's the difference. Even Aristotle and all these people are impious, but
some of them, at least they inquired about the soul, and some of them at least concluded that there's a soul and there is God, which seems like a big difference from people like Nietzsche and Carl Jung and these people.
It's also, you got to some of those philosophers perhaps also grew up around the Christian tradition, so a lot of them were theists already before that. So their inquiry may have been on that basis, but now on that basis is not there of inquiry on the so it's just it's very much more atheistic, and so you get all these weird things that are happening nowadays. Philosophers, from the question of the modern age is, what is a woman? And that's it's apparently it's very difficult to answer, because there's a whole hour and a half documentary on what a woman is, and he goes and asks experts, and they can't say it. They don't know what to say, and they try to beat around the bush, and it doesn't make. How does that?
I found God in Las Vegas.
You found God in Las Vegas? What?
That's what that one philosopher said.
Okay, yeah, when you was here. So you get all these weird things on the basis of atheism. You get all these weird philosophies and understandings and weird questions also. So it's just the more you move away from the basis of God consciousness, the weirder it's gonna get. Anything else? I want to just add to this. The more important is the most important aspect is the cultural upbringing. If you see the Vedic culture, of course, one has to approach the spiritual master, that's the most important thing. But if you see from childhood, the mother and father, specifically mother is the first guru, it is said. Although he accepts an official spiritual master, he takes Diksha Sikshanu, this one, Margam. But the point is that it is although now it is all changing, but as per Vedic culture, the mother and father, they inculcate in them what are the basics in them. Just like Prabhupada, if you see, all the aspects of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said, I learned from my father. I learned how to produce the book and how to distribute the book and how to write the books from my spiritual master. That's what Prabhupada many times said. So we can see from the upbringing of Srila Prabhupada and that he learned everything, every aspect of Krishna consciousness from his father. And he used to, definitely would ask questions to his father. So the philosophers, if you see, even Rupa Goswami, when he approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he asked? Keyami. Keno amar jare tapatre. So he first asked, who am I? Although he knows, he doesn't know that. But when he is with mother and father and the first time, definitely it is that the cultural upbringing has a lot of difference compared to the Indian philosophers or Indian jigyasus, or those they are also jigyasus, but the point is that their upbringing, their wisdom is to ask question as to decide as to what is the gender about. Decide whether he is a man or a woman, who is going to define what is man, how is that. So it's so much of a low category. They don't think about there is reincarnation, there is death, there is something which is going to leave, this is all temporary. That question, even maybe very few, maybe Plato would have asked, oh, I am soul, you may kill me, but nothing happened. Who is that? Socrates, maybe. So very few like that. So cultural upbringing has a lot of significance in that. You want to say something else?
In regards to the fact that modern philosophers don't ask questions as deep as, say, the Greek philosophers, it seems to be a question of the amount of sinful activities that different kinds of philosophers that engage themselves in because of their lifestyle. Overall, these philosophers, it's at best, even when you read Aristotle or something, it's a bit it gets dry. It's not very. There is some material pleasure that sometimes people feel out of painstaking logic. But for instance, one of Aristotle's questions is, why does anything have property? You go about it and talk about it, in so many ways and things like that. Characteristics. Why does it have qualities? Why does it have any property? So, but it seems to be that because Aristotle lived at a very, very, ancient civilization, the amount of sense gratification is visibly less compared to what goes on today. I mean, especially the amount of ugra karma, sinful activities that one can commit today is an insane amount compared to those days. Even if, and also Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and all these people were not also known to be insanely wealthy either. It's not that they lived poor. In fact, one of Aristotle's principles is he didn't even define wealth as being having a lot of possessions, as what people think today as wealth. He said that
cultivation of virtue, courage.
Well, that, and then he also says that wealth is dependent on having a lot of things that you find to be useful to yourself. So Aristotle had some level of things like, okay, I'll only keep what I want, what is useful for me in my life, and otherwise I don't need it. He wouldn't just accumulate things for the sake of accumulating. So they had these kind of qualities that helped them, think a little better than modern philosophers like Freud, who was just, it's just, sexual, he's just a sex monger, it's like, that's all. There's nothing more than that. So therefore the quality is better. And, in general you will see that also, that philosophies or civilizations where sense gratification was curtailed, sense gratification was restricted, they have better philosophies. Even though Buddhism is Shunyavad and is basically atheism, still, because the Buddhists have had a culture, they don't have it anymore. That's why they don't have any philosophy anymore. But at a time when they had that culture of restraining from sense gratification, they came up with so many complex philosophies as to why we don't exist. But it is still from a philosophical standpoint, you require a lot more brain power to come up with something like that than to talk about whether you possessing male genitalia are actually a male or not. I mean, it's like it's very, very like, basically this is the difference between somebody who is actually coming up with a philosophy and someone who's straight up retarded. A retard also can come up with some kind of stupid things, but he's not a philosopher. So that's because of our sense gratification. What's that verse that you become mad? Nunam pramattam kurute vikarma. So this vikarma has become too much. Therefore, even Abrahamic religions, they don't have so much of a philosophy, because the philosophy is based on that God gave this world for you to enjoy. So how are you going to come up with much of a philosophy? Because your whole thing is that you just want to enjoy. And it's gross. The more refined the culture is, the more they focus on subtle sense gratification, which is of a higher platform. So, but modern philosophers are all into gross sense gratification. They don't even have a conception of intellectual sense gratification, because they can't approach that level so much.
One example is this Ramanuja, this mathematician, not the Sri Vaishnavacharya. Yeah. So in order to do maths and in order to develop proofs and theories, you have to be a great philosopher. Like, in order to do physics and mathematics on a high level, it's not so much about numbers, but about philosophy. But Ramanujan, he would just pray to demigods, and he would just when you study maths, it's insane. Like, he would write just this formula out of just his mind like that. He would just write it out, and it would be, the formula would, people haven't done this, nobody's ever came up with this formula before, and he would just do it, and he would write with within 5% error. And that's insane. Even when you go, these mathematicians work their whole lives to come up with one proof for one theory, one theoretical equation that they've come up with. But he would just do it like that.
He's from a Sri Vaishnava background. His life was very miserable, actually. Yeah. I once looked at his life to try to see what it says.
He went to the West.
He went to London, and he died.
Somebody warned him. Some astrologer told him, if you go, you'll actually.
So he wasn't, in that sense, coming from a Sri Vaishnava background, his intelligence was wasted, you can say, because that's the nature of this material pursuits. It just burns you out ultimately in the end.
But at least you can see like that, there's like quite a stark difference between someone who's coming from that sort of background and then the Western philosophers, he's misapplying it, but...
Srinivasa Ramaraju misapplied totally.
Yeah, he completely wasted his life.
Oh,
But it's just there's the Vedic culture depends on higher understanding. They'll pray to demigods and they'll pray to certain Vishnu avatars for knowledge and to be able to use their intelligence properly. So whereas the Western philosophy no clue, nothing. There's no aspects of that at all. So it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge, we've been me and Vishnu Chitta Prabhu were discussing the prayer and how powerful it is, and how the Vedic culture holds such a powerful mantras that they hold is so powerful. But growing up in the West, we don't have faith in it because we've never seen it. But it's just like that level of power is there within the philosophy where they pray and they get knowledge like this, and there's just so much. The level of intelligence is on a different level in Vedic culture. It's unconceived of in modern society.
Probably like Robert Tesla is like the highest, right?
I don't know.
He
I don't know so much about Robert Tesla.
He got he practiced celibacy and he got so many great ideas.
Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla.
Robert Tesla.
What is this? Who is this Robert Tesla?
Nikolai Tesla.
I don't know what his philosophy was.
He wasn't much.
He made an electric vehicle.
He was an inventor.
No, he discovered some free energy thing, something like that. They say he did practice celibacy. There are many people who practice celibacy.
Maharaj gives in that Brain Gain books.
Yeah, Dhanavir Maharaj writes a lot about it. Actually, that book is a little tough to read.
It's more or less like an American style of English, no?
Not so much the English, it's the philosophy also.
Philosophy itself. Yeah, it is. Yeah, one more thing is that the Western philosophers fill with lot of words, word geography. What is that called as? No. This is called as Shabdajala Maharanyam. Yeah, that is the characteristic of all philosophers. That is the characteristic of a philosopher. But the point is that I am talking in a modern sense. Of course, there is even Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Vedic philosophers, the Vedas are like the Pushpa, Veda, Vada, Rata, Partha. So they become attached to that. Of course, that is a different. But in Prabhupada says it's word jugglery, and he cuts within just one sentence. He cuts the whole philosophy. So
you can never come to a conclusion.
The difference is between Vedic philosophers and say Mayavadi philosophers is that at least Mayavad, you start with some kind of pramanas. You accept certain pramanas. I mean, that's why they fall in the school of Vedanta, because you accept Vedanta as pramana. And then you start and some system of structural thinking, you can say. It is word jugglery, but there is a little bit of structure to it. But Western philosophers, there is no structure. There is no pramana. There is nothing. It is just their own words standing on the so-called strength of their own capacity to think. And it becomes very dry because it is not so much depth to it. After some time, there is not much depth. You have to really speculate like anything, and then you keep on he speculated, you have to continue speculating. There is no what you call as a yoke. You know what a yoke is? It's like you yoke the bull, meaning it's you tie the bull and and that way you direct it in a particular direction. The philosophy is just all over the place, and it's just like just grappling in the dark. It's amazing that I was very shocked that with having such dry philosophy, till today, all these schools and universities still teach them, and students go and learn them. And I'm like, what is there in that they go and learn this? It's like he's so depressed. Therefore, these philosophers have to drink and have to do, because what is no, there is nothing. It's so depressing. You have to get into gross sense gratification because your philosophy sucks. There is no happiness in that. See, in the Mayavad philosophy, there is pious credit. I mean, you have to reach a whole level of piety by the time you become a Mayavadi sannyasi. Then you engage in some, thing. There is some, because of piety, there is a level of subtle sense gratification that you enjoy, by which you can reject these gross sense gratification. That way, this modern philosophy doesn't provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was first getting into philosophy. Like, I went to Barnes and Noble, like, just to find some philosophy books. And I remember going to the philosophy section and seeing like how boring those books look. Like, there's like these really thick books and they all look completely boring. And so there was just this one book. It was called Dr. Seuss and Philosophy. And so I literally just picked that one because I was like, at least I like Dr. Seuss is nice. I used to like Dr. Seuss, so I just picked that one. Horton Near the Who.
Yeah, dude.
What is it? Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham.
That's what I said.
So like I was like, this is like the only one that looks kind of fun. So I got that, and it turned out to be so depressing. It was like about like how all his books had this underlining meaning. How he was like suicidal and his wife died of like some chronic disease. I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, I dropped the book after like 100 pages. So it's really terrible philosophy
books.
He's the one that
did the Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah, he did all those books. It's really depressing. Huh?
I thought that was a movie.
Yeah, no, it starts from a book, and they make movies out of his books. But he had like
movies are made out of books.
Cat in a Hat.
Yeah.
Looked it up. There's the Cat in a Hat. That's
Cat in a Hat.
The philosophy.
These stories are like weird delusions of like a depressed man. Anywho, I stopped.
Basically, they're border. That's what I said. Border retard.
Yeah.
Basically, borderline retard.
I just became a conspiracy theorist after I read that book.
It's unfortunate that devotees are reading such type of books.
Devotees are reading?
Devotees read this monk who sold his Ferrari.
Who's that by?
That is, these type of books, like there is a book called, what is that? Shiv Khera, there is one more.
Robin
Sharma. It's like a huge book. There is one more book. Dale Carnegie, what is his name? How to Win Friends and Influence People. There is no bogus anybody to. He died from the 32nd floor, and he writes a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People because people don't have anything to do, so they write.
He committed suicide.
He committed suicide. It's a whole controversy whether he committed suicide or not. But the whole thing is that there is a gulf of difference between even if you take the Shat Darsanas. Even if you take the Shat Darshan, that is the beginning of understanding. Even if you speculate in Vedic philosophy, the Shat Darshanas means it starts with Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa. Ours is the Uttara Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa. So the point is that Mimamsa, there is and then Yoga, and then Vedanta. So even if you take the philosophy of Shat Darshanas, they don't make sense, but still they are far better than the Western philosophers. But I don't know about the philosophical classes which goes on in the name of Eastern religion, whether they teach all these Shat Darshanas.
No.
Shat Darshan they don't teach.
Even when they teach, they still teach like this Mayavad. They don't really know what's going on. It's like that sort of thing. It's not.
Even the Ved, even you leave about theistic culture. Even atheistic culture used to depend on Sanskrit and like the Charvak Muni. There is Ashtavakra.
Yeah.
Ashtavakra is a Mayavadi, but then maybe Yagya. Yeah, see even if you take any who is that? Kalidasa. He is Vedic scholar, but he's not atheist as such, but it is a different culture as such. But point is that even if you take Charvak Muni, I once tried to read the whole this one, try to find where is this verse and how he goes about. Where is this verse? Dridang Kritva Ibam Pibet Yavat Jivet. He's writing in Sanskrit, and that too in a very, very nice way, and want to encourage people to eat. What is that? Ghee. You know, in atheistic philosophy, he is ready to encourage people to eat keys. So there is a gulf of difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Mataji, have any questions? Yes.
You can give.
So I'm sure you've probably been faced with different people who, like, you know, they may seem to be, you know, sincere, and they may come, but they, you know, whenever they ask their questions, they always want to challenge, you know, and it seems as if, like, they don't want to accept anything, you know, but they just want to challenge you, but they come around, you know, like, how do you deal with that, you know?
Yeah. Give them prasadam. Give them prasadam. I mean, the thing is, like, ultimately it comes, like, their challenge, like I said, you know, they challenge so much, but, like, where is your life? Like, all right, philosophical things aside, like, where is your life? How are you living your life, and how are we living our life? Huh? You can, you know, philosophize and challenge as much as you like, but at the end of it, we're living much better lives than you. And yeah, if they keep challenging and questioning and they're still coming around, whatever, just like you said, just give them prasadam and just be friends with them. There's not so much you can do. But then also, you know, you have to see if they're having a bad influence on others. Then if they're having a bad influence on others, then you can request, hey, look, you know, you can come to the Tuesday program, but, you know, please, you don't have to come to the morning program. If there's like new people coming and they're sincere, and then there's this one person disturbing the whole situation, then you have to consider whether they can come or not. So you got to see it by situation. But yeah, sometimes even after you defeat them, they want to keep challenging. You just tell them, look, you know, we've already discussed this so many times. If you don't like it, you don't have to come here. And so,
Right.
we did that to this guy. We did it this was traveling with Nali and Ali Krishna Prabhu now, and we were in Denver, and it was this bogus guy, some Buddhist, Mayavadi, just hodgepodge, and he was living in the Brahmacharya ashram. So then we sat together and just like smacked him around, not like physically, you know, but like, we were just at the end of it, like obviously he's not going to agree to it. And I said, what are you doing here? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what the heck are you doing here? Like, you don't agree with any of the philosophy, you're envious of the philosophy, you don't care about the people that are actually taking care of you, what are you doing here? But you know, you can give him prasadam, as long as they're not like harming other people's devotional progress. Yes. Is there anything more? Yeah?
But, like, how can you determine if somebody's harming somebody else's progress if it's like they're like you know, like they're friends? So it's like they influence each other. So
yeah, that's where you have to become expert in how to like deal with that. It's really tough. Sometimes I've had that situation where people just get together and they just, you know, they come from a similar background. They come together, gel together, and they in their own maya, and they go off and they do their own thing. How much can you control? You can't control so much. But it's important in the beginning when they come to try to establish ourselves as the center of their association, not having their own group as the center of their association. It's difficult to do. You have to learn situation by situation. Anything else? No? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vansha Kalpatarvishya, Kripa Sindhu Vyavacha Patitanam Bhani Vishnu.